The city was quiet that night, too quiet. Daniel walked slowly along the dark street with a small plastic bag in his hand. Inside were a few pieces of bread and some leftover meat from his dinner. He always saved food for the stray dogs that lived around the old buildings. It was his routine, his way of feeling less lonely. Every night the dogs waited for him, tails wagging, eyes shining in the dim streetlights. But tonight something was different. The air felt heavy, like a storm was coming even though the sky was clear. The dogs were already there, waiting near the broken fence. When Daniel threw them the food, they did not run to eat it. Instead, they growled low, their bodies tense. Their eyes staring at the shadows, Daniel frowned, because the dogs had never acted like this before. He looked into the dark alley beside the fence. At first he saw nothing, only trash cans and broken crates. But then a soft sound reached his ears, not a bark, not a cat's meow, but something like a whisper mixed with a cry. It was weak, almost lost in the night air. Daniel's heart began to beat faster. He stepped closer, ignoring the dog's growls. And then he saw them. Two small figures were huddled together in the corner of the alley. Their bodies shook with cold and hunger. When Daniel's eyes adjusted, he realized they were not normal children. Their skin glowed faintly, like pale light under the surface. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, shining softly even in the dark. Their clothes were torn, strange fabric that looked half-burned. They were not from here, not from Earth. Daniel froze, not believing what he was seeing. One of the figures raised her head slowly. She looked no older than 13. Her voice was broken and dry, but the words were clear. "Please, food," she whispered. The other girl clutched her stomach, her face filled with pain. Daniel's hands trembled as he took out a piece of bread. He walked closer and held it out. The first girl reached with shaking fingers. She took the bread carefully, like it was the most precious thing in the world. Both of them began to eat quickly, tears in their strange glowing eyes. Daniel watched in silence. His mind raced with questions. Who were they? Where did they come from? Why were they here? Starving, hiding in the dark streets of his city. He wanted to run, to call someone. Maybe the police, but his heart refused. They looked too weak, too desperate, too human in their suffering. The dogs slowly calmed, watching from a distance. Even they seemed to sense the girls were not a threat. Daniel knelt down, speaking in a gentle voice. "My name is Daniel. What happened to you?" The girls exchanged a glance but said nothing. Instead, the older one whispered again, "Hungry? Please don't let them find us." Her voice cracked, and Daniel felt a chill go down his spine. Don't let who find them? Who was hunting them? The questions piled up, but there was no time. Daniel heard a faint sound above the rooftops. A mechanical hum, soft but sharp. He looked up quickly, and for a second, he thought he saw a shadow moving across the roofline. It was gone in an instant, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. His stomach tightened. His breath caught in his throat. He looked back at the girls. They were still eating, their hands shaking, their faces thin and pale. Something deep inside Daniel told him that this was no accident. They were not just lost, not just strangers, they were survivors, running from something far greater than he could imagine. And now, by finding them, he was part of it. The night grew colder. The dogs huddled together near the fence. Daniel stood slowly, making his decision. He could not leave them here, not with danger so close. "Come with me," he whispered firmly. The girls hesitated, their glowing eyes filled with fear. But after a moment, they nodded weakly. Daniel reached out his hand, and they placed theirs in his, trembling but trusting, as they stepped out of the alley together. Daniel glanced once more at the rooftops. The street was empty. But he knew he was wrong to think they were alone. Something was watching, hidden in the night, and whatever it was, it would not stop until it found the two alien girls. Daniel pulled them closer and walked faster. The strange night had only just begun. Daniel's small apartment was dark and quiet. He closed the door quickly, locking it twice. The two strange girls sat on the floor, still holding the last crumbs of bread in their hands. They looked around the room carefully, like animals hiding from hunters. Their glowing eyes reflected the weak light from the street outside. Daniel's heart was still racing. He had never seen anything like them before, but he could not throw them out, not when they looked so close to death. He brought water in 2 old cups. The girls drank greedily, water running down their chins. The younger one coughed but kept drinking until the cup was empty. Daniel knelt down, trying to keep his voice calm. "You're safe here," he said softly. "My name is Daniel. Can you tell me yours? For a moment, they only stared at him. Then the older girl whispered, Lyra. The younger one pressed close to her sister and added, Mira. Their voices were small, almost broken. Daniel nodded, repeating the name slowly. Lyra, Mira. Okay. Silence filled the room for a while. Only the sound of the city outside broke it. Daniel could not hold his questions any longer. What are you doing here? You're not from Earth, right? At those words, the girls stiffened. They lowered their heads, their small hands gripping each other tightly. Finally, Lyra spoke, her words heavy with fear. We fell. Our home is far away. Mira's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, hungry, hiding. Always hiding? Daniel sat back, feeling his skin grow cold. He wanted to believe this was just a dream, but the evidence was right in front of him. 2 alien children were sitting on his floor, starving, trembling, begging for safety. Lyra's eyes met his suddenly. Sharp and serious, they will come, she said, her voice shaking. They are looking for us. Daniel felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Who? He asked quickly, but Lyra looked away. Refusing to explain more, Daniel rubbed his face with his hands. This was too much for one night, yet something inside him told him that if he asked the wrong people for help, the girls would vanish forever. Not saved, just taken, locked away, or worse. He thought of the shadow on the rooftops, the strange hum in the air. His gut told him these children were not lying. To change the heavy silence, Daniel opened an old cupboard and pulled out some canned food. He heated it on a small stove, the smell filling the room. The girls watched with wide eyes, like the simple act of cooking was magic. When he placed the bowls before them, they ate fast. As if they hadn't tasted real food in weeks, Daniel noticed Mira's hands glowing faintly blue as she touched the metal spoon. Suddenly, the broken radio on the table sparked to life. Static filled the air, then a faint voice. Though Daniel had never switched it on, he froze, staring at Mira. Her eyes widened in fear, and she pulled her hand away quickly. The radio went dead again. Neither girl said a word, but the silence carried its own warning. Daniel leaned back slowly, his mind struggling to understand. They can do things, he whispered to himself. Lyra shook her head quickly. We don't want to hurt. We only want to live. Her words were desperate. Filled with pain, Daniel nodded, forcing a calm smile. I believe you. But deep inside, he knew the truth. If these powers were seen by others, no one would let them go free. Suddenly, the sound of sirens cut through the night air. Red and blue lights flickered outside Daniel's window. His heart jumped. The girls stiffened like cornered animals. Clutching each other tightly, Daniel moved to the window carefully. Pulling the curtain back just a little, several black vans had stopped on the street. Men stepped out, dressed in dark uniforms, carrying strange scanning devices. They weren't normal police, their movements were too sharp. Too organized, one of them lifted a device, a glowing screen that seemed to scan the area. Daniel's chest tightened. They were searching for something or someone. He turned quickly, whispering, You have to stay quiet. Do not make a sound. The girls nodded, their glowing eyes wide with fear. A knock suddenly rattled his door, loud and heavy. Daniel froze, sweat dripping down his neck. Open up! A voice demanded, deep and commanding. Daniel's hands trembled, but he forced himself to answer. Who is it? This is routine, the man outside replied, too cold to be normal. We are checking for unusual activity in this building. Daniel's stomach twisted. Unusual activity they already suspected. He looked at the girls. Mira's hands glowed faintly again, her fear too strong to hide. Daniel whispered harshly, Stop, please. They'll see the light. She pressed her hands to her chest, trying to control it, tears rolling down her face. The knocking grew louder, shaking the thin door. Daniel swallowed hard, preparing to open. But just before he touched the handle, a blinding flash lit the room. Mira had lost control. The old light bulb above them burst with a spark. Electricity crackled in the air. Through the thin walls, Daniel heard voices shouting, They're here! Upstairs! Lyra pulled Mira close, whispering fast in a language Daniel could not understand. The sound of heavy boots began pounding up the stairs. Daniel's chest tightened, his mind racing. He had taken them in. He had promised they were safe. Now danger was right outside his door. He turned toward the girls, his voice firm. Stay behind me. His hands shook. But his eyes were steady. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something burning inside him. not fear but the will to protect. The strange night was no longer just about feeding stray dogs. It had become something far greater, a fight for survival, and the hunters were already here. The sound of boots grew louder in the stairwell. Daniel's heart pounded as the door shook under another knock, stronger this time. "Open now," a voice commanded. He glanced back at the two alien girls, their glowing eyes wide with terror. Lyra held Mira tightly, whispering in their strange tongue, trying to calm her. Daniel felt trapped, the walls of his small apartment suddenly closing in. He moved quickly, shoving a chair against the door. The thin wood would not hold for long, but every second mattered. "Stay quiet, stay low," Daniel whispered. His voice sharp but gentle. The girls nodded, their small bodies trembling. The pounding on the door turned into heavy thuds. The men outside were preparing to break in. Daniel scanned the room desperately. He had no weapons, no plan, only instinct. His eyes landed on the narrow window at the back of the apartment. It opened to the fire escape, rusty but still standing. "Come," he said firmly, pulling the girls toward it. Lyra hesitated, fear freezing her in place. But Mira tugged her sister's hand, and together they climbed onto the metal steps. Daniel followed, shutting the window behind them just as the door burst open. The sound of wood splintering filled the night air. Voices barked orders inside the apartment. "Search every corner." "They're close!" Daniel led the girls down the fire escape, their footsteps light but hurried. The city felt alive with danger, shadows stretching like claws. He kept his body between the girls and the street, ready to shield them from any eyes below. Reaching the alley, they crouched behind a dumpster. Daniel peeked out carefully. The black vans still lined the street. Engines humming, men in dark uniforms spread out, scanning doorways with strange devices. One man raised his scanner and it gave a sharp beep. Daniel's chest tightened. The machine pointed straight toward his building. He knew they had only seconds. "Move," he whispered, guiding the girls down the alley. Their bare feet made no sound, but Mira stumbled once. Too weak from hunger and fear, Daniel caught her before she fell. Lifting her small frame in his arms, her eyes met his, shining with both gratitude and shame. "You're safe," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if it was true. They slipped deeper into the maze of alleys. Behind them, voices grew louder. They ran. This way. The hunters were fast, too fast. Daniel pushed himself harder, lungs burning. He had no training, no experience in running from soldiers, but he had something stronger, desperation, and a promise to himself that he would not let these children be taken. The alleys twisted like veins through the old part of the city. Daniel turned corner after corner, trying to stay ahead, but then a sudden beam of white light cut across the walls. A drone hovered above, its red lens scanning the ground. Daniel pulled the girls into the shadow of a broken archway. Pressing them against the wall, the drone paused. Humming as if sniffing the air, Mira's hands glowed faintly again. Panic rising, Daniel shook his head quickly, whispering, "No, don't, they'll see." She bit her lip hard, trying to stop the glow. Finally, the drone drifted away, but Daniel knew it would return. They needed a place to hide, something better than alleys and shadows. Daniel thought fast. The subway tunnels abandoned at night. He had used them before when wandering alone, a place no one cared about. Gripping Lyra's hand, still carrying Mira, he hurried toward the nearest station. Behind them, the hunters spread out, their footsteps echoing through the empty streets. The sound of radios crackled, orders flying between them. They can't escape. Close the block. At last, the subway entrance appeared. Daniel yanked open the rusted gate and pulled the girls inside. The air was damp, filled with the smell of old concrete. Their footsteps echoed as they rushed down the stairs. Darkness swallowed them, broken only by the flickering of one dead bulb. The tunnels stretched like veins into the earth, endless and cold. Here, the hunters' machines would be weaker. Daniel hoped the girls huddled close, their breaths quick and shallow. Lyra's voice was low, shaking. "They will never stop. They will take us and break us." Daniel crouched in front of her, his eyes steady. "Not if I can help it," he said, his words simple but full of fire. Mira touched his sleeve with trembling fingers, whispering, "Why? Why help us?" Daniel looked at her, and for a moment he had no answer. Why was he risking his life for strangers, for beings not even human? But then he remembered the way they cried over bread, the way they clung to each other like sisters trying to survive. Because no one else will, he said firmly. Because it's the right thing. Before the girls could reply, the echo of boots reached the tunnel. Flashlights swept across the darkness, beams slicing the air. Daniel pushed the girls behind an old pillar. The hunters entered, voices sharp. They're down here. Spread out. Daniel held his breath. Every muscle tight, the lights moved closer, footsteps echoing like a drumbeat of doom. Mira squeezed her sister's hand, whispering in fear. Lyra bit her lip. Her glowing eyes locked on Daniel, trusting him with everything. Just as one beam of light neared their hiding place, the subway roared. A train passed on a nearby track, shaking the walls, drowning the hunters' footsteps. The noise covered Daniel's movement as he signaled the girls to run. They darted deeper into the tunnels, hearts pounding behind them. Angry shouts rose above the noise. They're moving! Don't lose them! The chase had only just begun. Daniel knew the city was no longer his safe home. It was a battlefield, and the hunters would not stop until the girls were caught. He clenched his fists, whispering to himself as they vanished into the darkness. They'll have to go through me first. The tunnels stretched on like a maze. Damp and endless, Daniel's breath came fast, but he kept moving, pushing the girls ahead. The sound of boots still echoed behind them. Distant but not gone, the hunters were spreading out, using their strange devices to track. Every shadow felt alive, every corner another trap. Daniel had never been hunted before, but now every step was survival. The subway air was heavy, filled with dust and the metallic scent of old rails. Mira stumbled again, her body weak, but Daniel caught her before she hit the ground. Her glowing eyes flickered with exhaustion. We can't keep running, she whispered. Voice thin, Daniel shook his head, forcing determination. You have to. We don't stop until they lose us, Lyra helped her sister, holding tight as they pushed forward together. Their small frames seemed so fragile, yet there was fire in their eyes. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber. Once used for maintenance, rusting machines sat silent. Broken pipes dripping water onto the floor. Daniel guided the girls behind the largest machine. They crouched there, catching their breath in silence. He listened carefully, every nerve on edge. The hunters' voices drifted faintly through the tunnels. They're close, keep scanning. Daniel's jaw tightened. He turned to the girls, whispering, You said you fell. From the sky. Lyra nodded slowly, her eyes filled with sadness. Our ship is broken, gone. We have nowhere, only running. Her words cracked like fragile glass, Mira added weakly. They want us, to take us back, or to end us. Daniel frowned, his chest tightening. Why? You're just children. Lyra looked away, refusing to answer, but her silence said enough. These were not normal hunters. They wanted more than capture. Suddenly, a faint red light swept across the chamber wall. Daniel's heart jumped. He grabbed the girls and pulled them deeper into the shadows. A small drone hovered silently into the chamber, its lens glowing like an eye. It scanned the room slowly, a low hum filling the air. Daniel pressed a finger to his lips, urging the girls to stay still. But Mira's hands began to glow faintly again, fear trembling through her body. Daniel quickly placed his hand over hers, whispering, Not now. Control it. Her tears glistened in the dim light as she tried to obey. The drone hovered longer, then drifted away, disappearing into the tunnels. Daniel exhaled slowly, his hands shaking. Every close call pulled them closer to being caught. He knew they couldn't stay underground forever. The hunters would seal off the tunnels sooner or later. They needed the open air, more places to vanish. Come on, he whispered, guiding them forward again after what felt like hours. They found an exit ladder. Daniel climbed first. Pushing the heavy grate open, cold night air rushed in. Filled with the sound of distant traffic, he pulled the girls up one by one, until they stood in a narrow alley above ground. The city lights glowed around them, tall buildings rising like steel giants, but the streets were not safe. Black vans still moved in the distance. Daniel guided the girls deeper into the back streets. Avoiding the main roads, every shadow was both friend and enemy. They were alive only because the hunters had not yet closed the net. As they moved through the sleeping city, Daniel noticed something strange. The air buzzed faintly. Like invisible energy flowing above, Lyra looked up suddenly, eyes wide with fear. They are here, she whispered, pointing at the sky. Daniel followed her gaze and froze, far above. A dark shape moved silently between the clouds. Not a plane, not a helicopter, it was too smooth, too silent, too alien, a hunter ship. Daniel's stomach dropped. So it wasn't only humans after them. They rushed into another alley, hiding beneath an overhang. The ship passed slowly overhead, its lights scanning the streets below. Daniel pulled the girls close, his arms wrapped around them as if to shield them from the entire sky. He felt their small bodies trembling for a moment. The hum of the ship drowned out all other sounds. Then it moved on, vanishing into the horizon. But Daniel knew it would return. Now it was clear. The hunt was not only human. The girls clung to him, their glowing eyes filled with tears. "We have no one left," Lyra whispered, voice breaking. "Our people are gone. We are the last." Daniel's throat tightened. He looked at them. 2 children from another world, lost and hunted. And he knew then why he could not abandon them. They weren't just aliens, they were survivors. And they needed someone to fight for them. But survival alone wasn't enough. They needed answers. A way to fight back, Daniel thought quickly. There was an old factory on the edge of the city. Long abandoned, he had gone there before. A place forgotten by most. It might give them a chance to rest, to think, to plan. "We'll go there," he said firmly. "You'll be safe." At least for a little while, the girls nodded, trusting him completely. Their trust felt heavy. But Daniel carried it with pride as they moved through the alleys. Avoiding lights and sounds, Daniel's mind raced. The hunters were powerful, armed with machines, ships, and endless patience. He was only a man with no weapons and no plan. Yet as he looked at the 2 fragile figures walking beside him, he felt a strange fire in his chest. Humans might not have strength like aliens, but they had something else, stubbornness, courage, and the will to protect, and Daniel would prove it. Far behind them, the hunters regrouped, scanning the streets again. Their leader spoke coldly into his radio. "They cannot hide forever. The shadows will not save them." But Daniel and the 2 alien sisters had already melted deeper into the night, and the city itself seemed to hide them. As if choosing sides, the hunt was far from over. But Daniel was ready. The shadows would not only be their prison, they would become their shield. The old factory loomed ahead, silent and broken. Its windows were shattered, its roof sagging, and rust spread across the steel doors. Daniel pushed them open with effort, the screech of metal echoing through the night. Inside, dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts. The floor was littered with old tools, broken crates and scraps of machines long forgotten. It was the perfect place to disappear. At least for a while, he led the girls inside. Closing the doors behind them, for the first time since the chase began, they could breathe. Mira sank to the ground, too weak to stand. Lyra knelt beside her, holding her hand tightly. Daniel searched for something useful and found an old blanket under a pile of junk. He shook the dust from it and wrapped it around the sisters. Their glowing eyes softened for the first time, safe, but only for the moment. Daniel crouched down, his voice calm but firm. "You have to tell me more," he said. "If I'm going to protect you, I need to know what I'm fighting against." Lyra lowered her gaze, silent, but Mira whispered softly. "Our people are gone, the war ended them. Only we remain." Her words carried deep sadness, and Daniel felt the weight of it. "War?" He repeated, his voice almost a whisper. Lyra finally spoke, her voice sharp with pain. "Hunters, they destroyed our home, they chased survivors. They want no trace left." Daniel's chest tightened. So these children were the last of their kind, running from extinction. No wonder the hunters wanted them so badly. Before he could ask more, the factory lights flickered. Daniel froze, staring at the ceiling. He had not touched any switch. There was no power here. The light flickered again, faint but steady. Then Mira gasped, her small hands glowing softly. She looked frightened. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "Sometimes it happens when I'm scared." Daniel realized her touch carried energy, enough to awaken dead machines, but what else could she do? And if the hunters saw that power, they would never stop. The silence was broken by a sound outside. A crunch of gravel, soft but clear. Daniel tensed. Signaling the girls to stay low, he moved carefully to a broken window, peering out into the night. A shadow moved across the yard, tall and steady. Not a soldier, not a drone, something else. The figure walked slowly with purpose, as if it already knew where to go. Daniel's heart pounded harder. The figure stepped into the moonlight. It looked human at first, wearing a long coat and boots. But when it lifted its face, Daniel saw eyes that burned with a golden glow. Not human eyes, not even close. The skin shimmered faintly under the light, shifting like scales hidden beneath flesh. This was no man, it was an alien, a hunter of a different kind. Daniel ducked back, his breath catching. The sisters were not just being chased by humans, but by other species too, a bounty hunter. One who could walk among humans without notice, the worst kind of predator. The factory doors creaked, slow and heavy. The golden-eyed stranger stepped inside, every movement calm and confident. His voice was low, smooth, almost polite. "You can't hide them forever," he said. As if speaking to the shadows, Daniel's blood ran cold. How did he know they were here? The hunter's boots echoed on the concrete floor, step by step closer to where the sisters hid. Lyra held Mira tightly, her face pale, her body trembling. Daniel clenched his fists, his body ready though he had no weapon. This was madness, he thought, yet he could not let the man reach them. The bounty hunter paused, sniffing the air, as if tracking their scent. "I can smell fear," he whispered, his lips curling into a strange smile. He moved toward the crates, and Daniel knew they were seconds away from discovery. He acted on instinct, grabbing a rusted metal pipe from the floor. He stepped out from the shadows, raising it like a weapon. "Stay away from them!" Daniel shouted, his voice strong despite the fear inside. The hunter turned slowly, his golden eyes locking onto Daniel. A laugh echoed in the factory, deep and cruel. "You? A human? You think you can stop me?" His words cut like knives, but Daniel stood his ground. The hunter moved fast, too fast. He knocked the pipe aside with one hand, the metal clanging against the wall. Daniel staggered but did not fall. He swung again with his fists, desperate. The hunter caught his arm easily, his grip like iron. "You're brave," he said softly, "but foolish." Then Mira cried out. Unable to watch any longer, her hands burst with blue light, filling the factory with a glow like lightning. The hunter released Daniel instantly, hissing as the light struck him. His coat burned where the energy touched, his smile fading into anger. Lyra pulled her sister close, whispering, "No, stop." "They'll find us," but it was too late. The glow lit the broken windows, spilling into the night. Outside, distant sirens grew louder, engines roaring. The human hunters would arrive soon. Drawn by the light, the bounty hunter snarled, his voice sharp with fury. "I will take them, no matter what it costs." Daniel pulled the sisters behind him, his fists shaking. He had no plan, no power. But he had one thing left, courage. "Then you'll have to go through me," he growled. The factory filled with tension, the alien hunter standing tall, Daniel standing defiant, and above, the hum of engines grew closer. The city was closing in, both human and alien. The sisters had nowhere left to run, and Daniel knew the real fight was only beginning. The factory walls shook with the sound of engines outside. Red and blue lights flickered faintly through the broken windows. The hunters were closing in, human and alien both, inside. Daniel stood between the sisters and the golden-eyed bounty hunter. His fists clenched, his chest rising and falling with fear and fury. Lyra and Mira clung to each other, their glowing eyes wide with terror. The bounty hunter's smile returned, sharp and cruel. "You are only human," he said softly, stepping forward. "You cannot fight me. You cannot fight them." Daniel raised the rusted pipe again, his voice steady. "Maybe I can't, but I won't let you take them." The hunter tilted his head, amused by the defiance. "You protect them as if they were your own blood. Why?" Daniel's answer came without thought. "Because they deserve to live." The alien moved like lightning, his coat sweeping through the dust. Daniel swung the pipe, but it was caught in mid-air. The hunter twisted it aside, sending Daniel crashing into a pile of crates. Wood splintered around him, pain shot through his shoulder, but he forced himself back to his feet. Spitting blood onto the floor, he would not stay down, not while the girls watched him fight. Mira screamed, her hands glowing with blue fire. Bolts of energy shot across the factory. Striking the hunter's arm, the alien hissed in anger, the skin of his arm burning, but he recovered quickly, eyes blazing with rage. "You think your sparks can stop me, little one?" he snarled. Lyra pulled her sister back, whispering in panic, "Not too much. You'll burn yourself out." Daniel staggered forward. Using the distraction, he hurled a heavy wrench at the hunter's face. The alien swatted it aside, but the moment's delay was enough. Daniel grabbed a broken chain hanging from the ceiling. He swung it hard, wrapping it around the hunter's arm. The alien roared, trying to rip free, but Daniel held on with all his strength. "Run!" Daniel shouted to the sisters, his voice echoing through the factory. But Lyra shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, we will not leave you." The hunter pulled the chain loose with a violent snap. Daniel was thrown back again, his body slamming against the concrete floor. Pain shot through his ribs, his vision blurred, yet still he rose, crawling to his feet, his defiance unbroken. Outside, doors slammed and boots thundered. The human hunters had arrived, their voices sharp. "Surround the building. Don't let them escape." Spotlights pierced the dusty air through the windows. Shadows danced across the walls. The bounty hunter glanced toward the noise, his smile returning. "They are here for the same prize as me," he said. "But unlike me, they will not care if the children live or die." Daniel's stomach turned cold. The factory doors burst open, soldiers pouring inside. They carried rifles and strange scanning devices that beeped rapidly. Their leader shouted, "Everyone down! Hands where we can see them!" But when they saw the bounty hunter, their weapons shifted. Confusion spread across their faces. He was not supposed to be there, not part of their orders. The hunter turned to them, golden eyes glowing bright. "These children are mine," he said in a voice that shook the air. The soldiers hesitated, fear gripping them. Then chaos erupted. Mira cried out, her power bursting uncontrolled. Blue light filled the factory, sparks raining from the ceiling. Machines long dead came alive for a moment, whirring and grinding. The soldiers shouted, firing blindly. Bullets clanging against steel beams. Daniel dove forward, shielding the girls with his body. "Stay down!" he yelled, his voice raw. The bounty hunter moved through the storm like a predator. He struck soldiers aside with terrifying strength. Bodies crashed against the walls. Rifles clattered to the floor. The factory had become a battlefield. Daniel grabbed one of the fallen rifles. His hands shaking, he had never fired a weapon before. But tonight there was no choice. He raised it, aimed at the bounty hunter's chest, and pulled the trigger. The blast echoed, the recoil jolting through his arms. The bullet struck, but the hunter staggered only slightly. His coat tore. His flesh shimmered with golden scales beneath. He turned, his eyes burning hotter. "You cannot kill me," he hissed. Daniel fired again and again, forcing the alien back step by step. Lyra pulled Mira toward cover, shielding her from the crossfire. The soldiers regrouped, shouting orders. "Focus fire! Bring him down!" Bullets filled the air, sparks flying as they ricocheted off steel. The bounty hunter roared, his body glowing with strange energy. With one sweep of his arm, he sent soldiers flying like dolls. The rifle in Daniel's hands clicked empty. Useless, he dropped it, breathing hard, sweat pouring down his face. Yet still he stood between the sisters and the alien. The hunter's voice grew cold, filled with fury. "You are only delaying the inevitable, human." Daniel straightened his back despite the pain. "Maybe," he said, his voice steady, "but sometimes delaying is enough." At that moment, Mira's glow surged brighter than ever before. Her fear had turned to resolve. She raised her hands, and a wave of energy exploded outward. The walls shook, the windows shattered. Light filled the night. The bounty hunter staggered, roaring in rage as the energy burned across his body. Soldiers dove for cover, shielding their faces. Daniel shielded the sisters with his own body, refusing to let the storm touch them. When the light faded, smoke filled the factory. The bounty hunter stood in the center, burned and furious. His golden eyes locked on Daniel and the girls. "This is not over," he growled before anyone could fire again. He leapt into the shadows, vanishing into the night. The soldiers coughed in the smoke, regrouping quickly. Their leader shouted, "Forget him! Secure the targets!" Daniel's heart sank as the soldiers turned their weapons toward the sisters. He pulled them close, his voice firm. "You'll have to kill me first." The standoff filled the broken factory with silence. Soldiers on one side, Daniel and the alien children on the other. The next move would decide everything. Smoke hung heavy inside the ruined factory. The walls were cracked. The air filled with the stench of metal and fire. Daniel stood in front of the sisters. His arms spread wide. Lyra and Mira clung to him, their glowing eyes full of fear. The soldiers aimed their weapons, their leader stepping forward. "Stand aside, citizen," he barked, his voice sharp. "These are not children. They are alien property, dangerous to all of us." Daniel's jaw tightened. "They're not property," he said firmly, his voice echoing in the vast hall. "They're not weapons, they're just children. And I won't let you take them." The soldiers shifted uneasily, their rifles still raised. Behind them, more boots thundered as reinforcements poured inside. Dozens of armed men now filled the broken building. The bounty hunter's threat was gone for now. But this human army was just as dangerous. The leader's eyes were cold. "You don't understand, human," he said. They are survivors of a dangerous race. Their power cannot be trusted. We must contain them. Daniel shook his head, stepping closer to shield the girls more fully. I don't care about power. I care about what I've seen. He pointed at the sisters, their small frames trembling. They're starving, hunted, scared, begging only for a chance to live. That is not dangerous. That is innocent. The soldiers hesitated, whispers spreading through their ranks. Some looked at the girls and saw children. Others saw the glowing hands, the broken machines, the strange energy. Fear fought against compassion. Daniel's voice grew louder, more desperate. Every empire, every war, every monster begins with fear. If you treat them like enemies, then yes, maybe they'll become enemies. He took a breath, his eyes blazing. But if you treat them like family, if you give them kindness, maybe they'll learn what it means to be human. Silence filled the air, broken only by the drip of water from a broken pipe. One soldier lowered his rifle slightly, doubt in his eyes. Another followed, his grip loosening, but the leader growled. Enough, orders are clear. Take them. He raised his hand, ready to give the signal. At that moment, Mira stepped forward, her small body shaking, but her voice steady. No hurt, she whispered, her glowing hands raised. A soft light spread through the factory. Not violent this time, but warm. It touched the soldiers' faces, their fear melting into confusion. They felt not pain, but calm, like standing in sunlight after a storm. Daniel looked at the men, his voice quiet but strong. Do you feel that? That is not a weapon. That is hope, and you're about to destroy it. The soldiers froze, caught between duty and conscience. The leader's face twisted with anger. Stand down, he shouted at his men. Follow orders! But fewer and fewer obeyed, their rifles lowering, their eyes filled with doubt. Lyra clung to Daniel, whispering, Why do you fight for us? You could walk away, you could be safe. Daniel looked at her, his face bruised, his body aching. Because being human is not about safety, he said. It's about choice, and I choose to protect you. Tears welled in her glowing eyes, and she held her sister tighter. The leader's rage boiled over. He aimed his own rifle directly at Daniel. If you won't move, then you die first, he snarled. Time slowed, the factory frozen in silence. But before he could pull the trigger, another soldier stepped forward. His rifle knocked the leader's aim aside. No, the soldier said firmly. We won't murder children. Not tonight. More soldiers joined him, surrounding their own commander. The leader's eyes widened with fury, but he was outnumbered. His orders no longer had power. Daniel's chest rose and fell with relief. The sisters clung to him, their glowing eyes shimmering with tears. The soldiers lowered their weapons fully, forming a barrier between the girls and the orders that had hunted them. For the first time, the factory felt less like a trap and more like a sanctuary. Outside, the night was still dangerous. The bounty hunter still out there, the alien ship still watching from above. But for this moment, they were safe. Safe because human hearts had chosen compassion over fear. Daniel stood tall, his voice calm but commanding. They need a chance, they need freedom if we hand them over. Humanity loses more than it saves. The soldiers exchanged uneasy looks, but many nodded. One of them spoke quietly. What do we do now? Daniel looked down at Lyra and Mira, their small hands gripping his. We keep them safe, we help them survive, we show them what it means to be human. The sisters leaned against him, their bodies trembling but their eyes full of trust. Daniel realized something then, something powerful. Humanity was not strong because of weapons or machines. Humanity was strong because of choice, because of kindness, because of the stubborn will to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That was what made humans different. That was what made them special. The factory lights flickered once more, Mira's glow dimming as exhaustion took her. Daniel lifted her into his arms. Lyra following close behind, the soldiers parted, letting them through outside. The city stretched wide, filled with danger and mystery, but also filled with possibility. Daniel stepped into the night, carrying the last survivors of a world far away. And though the hunt was not over, he no longer felt like a man running in the shadows. He felt like something more, a guardian, a fighter, a human who had made his choice. The night swallowed them, but hope glowed brighter than fear. And so the story of Daniel, Lyra, and Mira was only beginning.